the fall of the Assad regime, with Ursula von der Leyen calling the collapse a historic change. Meanwhile, Eurogroup finance ministers are meeting in Brussels with global political tensions at the forefront of discussions. Well, Oliver Crook joins us with the finance minister.
Yeah, Francine, it's a really interesting time to really be talking about budgets and the finance ministries, because it is what has brought down two of the largest governments within Europe, whether it's Germany or France, and even the sort of debate over in South Korea also had its source within the budget. So there's a lot of problems to deal with. So I'm very pleased to be joined by the finance minister of Portugal, Joaquim Miranda Sarmento. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
So listen, I'd like to start on the issue of Syria because just of what happened over the weekend. I know it's not directly in your sort of control, but are you concerned that this might mean a more sort of refugee influx? You also potentially could have more coming from Ukraine, and that sort of finance ministers need to potentially budget a little bit more money to deal with that problem at a time of fiscal strain.
Well, first of all, we have to be happy with the overthrow of a dictatorship regime like the one in Syria. So let's wait to see how this new regime works. Let's see how it is able to bring back Syrian refugees. We are expecting to see what will happen. Obviously, if more refugees come to Europe, that will pose a new challenge like it happened a few years ago. But for now, we're basically waiting and see what the next weeks and months will bring us on that area.
And a lot of the focus for the investor community here in Europe has been on France over the last couple of weeks. This has, of course, has been crossing your desk, I imagine, as well. How concerned are you over the prospect of potential spillover? Because traditionally in Europe, it has been the periphery that maybe is a cause of issues. Now it's the core that is threatening potentially the periphery.
Well, I don't think there's any danger of spillover. The core of the European Union and the core of the Eurozone is very strong. The European Central Bank has now a different mandate that it had in 2009-10 when the sovereign debt crisis began. We also have the European Stability Mechanism, and all of us have learned substantially lessons about that other period. France obviously has a government problem, a problem of governability.
Yeah.
It has a fiscal situation that is very demanding, with the deficit probably above 6% of GDP and public debt increasing. That obviously creates pressure in the Eurozone, creates pressure in the country itself. I'm confident that the French will be able to find a political solution that could bring stability to that country, that could bring the reforms they need, not just for fiscal consolidation, but also to boost productivity and economic growth.
Yeah.
But the Eurozone is very strong. We have the mechanism, we have the instruments, we have the institutions, and I think there is no substantial danger over the Eurozone as a whole.
Yeah, and we have so many topics to deal with. Another one I'd like to deal with is the topic of trade. We had this sort of signing preliminary of Mercosur over on Friday. Is Portugal, broadly speaking, supportive of this trade agreement with Latin America? And what do you think needs to change? Are you concerned about it being blocked by, say, France?
Well, we're very optimistic about this agreement. We have strong ties with South America, first of all with Brazil, who speaks Portuguese and has been a Portuguese colony for centuries before becoming independent. We also have strong ties with all the rest of the Latin American countries. This agreement, every trade agreement, when it's based on a fair trade, is positive for all countries. It will improve the conditions of consumers, that will be able to have access to more products, and more competition always bring better benefits to consumers. Firms will have to adapt. Firms will have opportunities and risks, like every agreement. But at the end of the day, if we're able to assure that this is a fair trade for all parts will benefit from it.
I think that the concern, though, as I'm sure you'll be familiar, is that something like to what happened with China on industrial could happen with agriculture for the Europeans, where it's a place that has lower regulatory standards, lower sort of costs of labor and those sorts of things could then flood the market. Do you think that there's going to be a satisfactory resolution to that? Do you think that France and potentially Italy, Poland could block the deal?
Well, economic theory shows us that when these agreements are based on a fair trade, everyone benefits. Obviously, regulations and rules are very important. Everyone from South America or other parts of the globe who wants to sell in Europe will have to accept our regulations and our rules and our standards, and the same will happen with European firms selling to other parts of the globe. At the end, I think it will benefit, like all trade agreements before, have benefit generally population.
And in terms of, because there's the sort of globalizing aspect of this trade deal, there's also the deglobalizing aspect, potentially, of Donald Trump and the possible imposition of tariffs into Europe. What is the conversation you'll be having with finance ministers about what Trump's impact could be on the European economy?
Well, from my point of view, again, our talks with U.S. should be on how can we regulate trade, how can we not impose tariffs that will hurt consumers, especially the ones with less income. Those are the ones that will suffer more because they will have to buy products with a higher price and probably lower quality. So the discussion with U.S. has to be how can we make the trade agreements more robust, how can we make them more fair, and how can we complement what our two different economies need. We have problems in terms of energy, in terms of some technological products, agriculture, but U.S. also has some needs. So I think at the end, it will always be better to cooperate than to have unilateral decisions on tariffs.
And one of the big questions before European finance ministers right now is the question of defense, and there's a lot of debate about how to get that money mobilized to industry in order to build up industry within Europe. Are you in favor of potentially collective debt, joint debt, in an effort to do that, to front load some of those investments?
Well, first of all, countries need to robust their defense systems, and in the medium term to reach the NATO target of 2% of GDP spending being on defense. But if European as a whole needs to increase their defense expanding, especially because of Ukraine, whatever happens next year in the Ukraine, and we all hope that the war could end as soon as possible, a strong increase in the need for financing, for investing and spending on defense, we'll have to have a European joint solution in terms of coordination and in terms of financing. So we have also learned a lot of lessons from the pandemics, and those lessons are useful for the new risks and the new challenges that we face ahead, especially the ones related with defense.
And very quickly, when will Portugal hit its 2% target of NATO?
We have a commitment for 2029.
Okay.
We hope to fulfill that commitment, and if possible, even to move faster through that limit.
Well, Joaquim Miranda Sorrento, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Francine, I'll send it back to you. Dealing with many of the issues that the Europeans are facing now, from defense to possible migrant flows, and of course, that stability at the very core of Europe and France.
Ollie, thanks so much. Oliver Crook there with a fantastic conversation in Brussels with Portugal's finance minister. Plenty more to come.